What do you do, flight crew? FTC. Flight team stand up! I go by flight, but you can call me FTC. We got you so fresh, so clean educationalist. Now, the last time we reacted to echoes, I believe we did the comparisons of the most painful unalive moments by certain people. You guys was messing with it. This time, man, we have comparisons of the most painful punishments. Bro, believe it or not, bro, all the way back in the days, like 1320 BC, 320 BC, right? I think. Bro, they used to just do way different type of punishments. Now, usually nowadays, if you guys are not sleeping under a rock, if you do a crazy crime, most of the time you just get like a life sentence, and then at worst to worst, you can get the death penalty. But back then, for criminals, especially like very, very weird different cases, they would do public, you know what I'm saying, like crazy punishments, bro. And they obviously just can't do that anymore. So let's see what was the most painful ones.
You said something wrong about the church in the Middle Ages, so the Inquisition is after you now. They've used a leather strap to secure a device that looks like a two-way fork with two sharp points on your neck. One of its sides is pushing against your sternum, and the other against your chin. At first, you tried to keep your head up to lessen the pain, but you couldn't stay like this for long. The so-called heretic's fork wasn't deadly, but made the victim suffer from the tiniest move. However, on the scale of pain based on scientific research, this kind of suffering gets only 27 points out of 140.
What? What's worse than that?
In this video, you'll find out about the worst kind of torture in the history of humankind. So, viewer discretion is advised. You have at least a few times in your life been subjected to one of the less obvious kinds of torture. It's just that the executioner wasn't persistent enough when tickling you. In ancient China, this was the primary method of punishing delinquents from noble families, since tickles didn't leave any traces of torture on the body, and the victim was able to recover quite fast if the procedure didn't go too far, of course. In European countries, goats were employed as a torture device. The culprit was tied up, and salty water was poured on their feet to make the animal lick them. What's so bad about that, you might ask? It's just that there's an incredible number of nerve endings in the feet, and the goat's rough tongue would irritate them quite a lot. So, after a few hours, the tickling starts inducing not just
Bro, I'm sorry. Like, why does that just sound freaky as hell, bro? You're using another animal's tongue to lick your feet for torture? Like, yo, that's kind of crazy, bro.
But also painful muscle contractions. You lose virtually all control over your body, which causes extreme stress, anxiety, and exhaustion. Moreover, the nerve endings responsible for reacting to tickles also signalize pain.
That's crazy.
It's just that if we're being tickled for fun, and for a short time, our reaction to stress doesn't go beyond laughter and light sensations in the body. However, if done for hours, this causes the nervous system such overload that the lightest touch causes unbearable physical pain. Now imagine that it's not your feet being tickled, it's your private parts. In India, interrogation of criminals was accompanied by placing a small bug on the culprit's genitals and covering the insect with a walnut shell so that it didn't escape. The constant irritation of super-sensitive areas caused by the bug's movements made the torture unbearable very quickly, and the executioners got any confession they wanted. Eventually, tickle torture would result in death by asphyxiation if the victim developed a throat spasm caused by uncontrollable laughter.
Bro, what? Bro, I was just today now finding out. Bro, you can literally be unalive by getting tickled too much, bro. What? Bro, that's kind of crazy.
Their possible outcomes were cardiac arrest or a brain aneurysm provoked by serious stress. Yet on the pain scale, tickle torture got only 32 points since the suffering it brought was mostly psychological. This is very similar to the next kind of torture, the Chinese water torture. At first, the person was immobilized, and then cold water would slowly drip onto their face or head. Gradually, the constant skin irritation caused by the drops and splashes would make the nervous system hypersensitive. The inability to move and the wait for the next drop would literally start driving the person insane. Maybe you've even seen this torture in movies. Here's the paradox though. There's no proof that it was ever used in China. This kind of torture was first described by an Italian lawyer on the cusp of the 16th century. In the mid-18th century, German and French doctors attempted to use this method to cure mental disorders. Moreover, the very term Chinese water torture came into active use owing to a trick by the legendary Harry Houdini. So, does the water drop torture actually work? Since it can look harmless at first glance, a few bloggers have dared to try it out themselves. The water drop torture was also tested by the Mythbusters. All participants knew they were actually perfectly safe and could be freed at any moment. Yet everyone went through a hellish experience. At first, the experimenters suffered from cold, thirst, psychological tension, and physical discomfort. Then, their entire bodies started aching, and breathing problems arose. It all ended in a panic and desperate pleas to be released.
That is the worst.
In addition,
That's
after this
awkward.
episode, the Mythbusters received...
I say that's like more of awkward, if anything. Like, bro, just a drop of water. Bro, like, I mean, obviously, I feel like it'll be anybody's pet peeve. Like, if I just see anything like a faucet dripping and stuff like that, I want that fixed ASAP. So just imagine you just sitting there watching a drop of water hit your forehead.
That the Chinese water torture may cause mental issues that persist for 20 hours. So, on the pain scale, the water drop torture received 40 points, and a huge question as to whether it was actually used in practice. At least because it was replaced by much crueler kinds of water torture. One of them was the Swedish drink. This name was invented by the Germans. During the 30 Years' War, they became victims of the Swedish army servicemen, mercenaries, or marauders. This method of torture went as follows. Through a funnel, the perpetrators would pour buckets of the most disgusting liquids imaginable into the victim's throat. They used everything from urine and filth to manure and feces. This was the Swedes' way of torturing the civilians, to force them to give up their money or food.
Nigga, that's not even a punishment, that's robbery, bruh! Man, what type of sick, cold-ass robber doing that, man?
Not only did
I thought these were for punishments like they commit some crime, especially a weirdo-ass type of crime, bruh. Nigga wanted some money and food, bro, you doing that?
victims feel disgust and humiliation from being subjected to the Swedish drink. They also contracted...
Bro, I'm sorry, yo. In this time period when they was doing stuff like this back in the day, bro, like, there would have been no way possible, bro, I would have made it to like 20 years old, bro. Because I 100% would have crashed out. I'm not doing any of this. Y'all don't have to catch me, bro. I'm fighting everybody in that crowd and whooping everybody in that crowd, bro. Yo, no BS. Who taking, you taking flight, bro?
Furthermore,
one versus 103
causing
people?
horrific pain. The perpetrators would often use wooden planks to put pressure on the victim's bloated belly, or hit it with sticks to deepen the suffering. So, on the pain scale, the Swedish drink got 46 points out of the possible 140. Very often, one kind of torture ranged from public humiliation, accompanied by intense discomfort, to a death punishment with unbearable suffering. One of such hellish inventions was the kang. It's a large board consisting of two halves with a hole between them, used to keep the device on a person's neck. The kang wasn't secured in any way, so the culprit had to support the board with their hands and balance it while walking. To intensify the punishment, the person in a...
Bro, look at the dude on the bottom right. That just looks crazy, bro. Yo, like, are we gonna say that, like, bro, like, anything before, like, 1900, like, 1800s, 1700s, like, bro, I mean, to be honest, anybody, like, that was living, like, before, like, I said, when did TV get, like, color? Whenever TV got color and there was some type of internet, bro, if you was living before then, bro, I actually feel bad, bro. Because you missing out on everything that's going on right now, and then this is what they had to deal with. Like, man.
Kang could also be chained, stopping them from ever sitting down. Moreover, the kang's parameters would change according to the severity of the punishment. It could weigh anywhere from 9 to 15 kilograms and have a square, rectangular, or disproportionate, irregular shape. Sometimes they were even double or triple. Often a kang would be so large that the victim would be unable to touch their face to eat or drink. If they weren't helped by those who cared, the victim would die a slow death of hunger and thirst. Yet the kang was also used as an execution device. The convict was placed inside a tall cage made specifically for this purpose. A kang would be secured above. Then, a prop would be taken from under the victim's feet, and they would slowly...
Bro, you know what I just thought about? The reason why I thought about it because they were talking about something with, like, for, like, criminals and comics or something like that. Bro, Can you imagine the amount of people like back then? Like I'm talking maybe like 1500s and 1700s when they finally like made like all the laws of just everything that exists, such as like, okay, like stealing, shoplifting, or you know what I'm saying, like robbery, like etc. and stuff like that. Bro, do you ever think that like, bro, they literally let, especially like who they called good people around like wherever part of the country they lived in, they probably let a good 500 to thousands of people get away with those same crimes. And then they just woke up one morning and they were just like, you know what? This doesn't sit right with us. Don't y'all guys think that this is like bad, or this isn't something that people should normally, or normal functioning people should be doing? Let's think about making a law where we could just make it illegal. So if they commit it again, or if they commit it at all, well, you know what I'm saying, punish them. You know what I'm saying? Somebody had to wake up and think about that. Like, they had to be mature after seeing everything go on and all the chaos go on across the country and across the world, and just be like, okay, like, nah, we need to make this illegal. This shit isn't sitting right. Nobody shouldn't just be able to just run up on somebody and just knock them upside the head and just take all their belongings. That should be illegal. Like, that's actually kind of crazy, bro. Humans had to come together and think about something illegal, because this wasn't just like human born made. They didn't just like, nobody on earth was just born and just make these, like, you know. So
with the
I always think about that, bro. It's crazy.
That's how people were executed in China as recently as 1900, suffering excruciating pain. On the pain scale, Kang torture sits at 62 points.
That one's crazy.
However, even this horror is far from being the worst thing people ever came up with. Europeans during the Middle Ages were especially creative in their acts of cruelty. It was then that they invented and actively used a contraption called the Judas cradle. It's a spiky wooden or metal pyramid secured on a support with a special clamp over it. First, the victim's arms and legs were tied, and then their trunk was secured with a metal ring attached to the ceiling or the wall with ropes. After this, the person was slowly seated on the pyramid's sharp point. I won't go into the horrific anatomical details.
Oh, I know where this is going, bro.
Since it's clear anyway that the process caused unbearable pain.
Oh!
It could go on for days.
Days!
Executioners wanted to receive a confession or other information, but the victim remained silent. They tied weights to their arms and legs, causing the pyramid edges to gnaw at the poor person's body even more. As if that wasn't enough, the Judas cradle was never cleaned, so it became the
No, ew, fuck that shit. Oh my gosh, nah, that had it right there. That had it right there. That's disgusting. They just got motherfucking butt juice, fucking poop juice, all types of shit. And don't even let me get started. If a nigga, imagine a nigga had an STD, bro. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. No, bro. Yo, this got to be the most foulest, sickening educational video right here, bro. Like when you come to realization on that entire situation, that is disgusting. That is disgusting, bro. That is disgusting, bro. Oh my gosh. Like, I feel like, bro, whenever they was doing punishments like this, bro, 90% of the diseases that you hear about and see about now, like, they had come from that clearly. The fact they wasn't cleaning that's nasty, bro. Man.
Breeding ground for deadly bacteria. So, even if the victim...
Even the people that's not even getting punished, that's handling the equipment, trying to move it around and stuff like that, they didn't have soap invented back in the day. They wasn't washing their hands. They went right home. They went to go hunt some deer or something like that and eat bare hand. Oh, my goodness, bro. Ew. No wonder the life expectancy, I think back then they said was like, what, 25 years old, I think, or 20?
Infections. At any rate,
bro,
they remain scarred physically and psychologically for the rest of their lives. That's why the Judas cradle received 79 points on the pain scale, crossing the midpoint. However, the first device to go beyond 100 in our list is the oubliette. It's a horizontal tunnel with the only way out in the form of a grated opening above, used as a dungeon. Often, it was so narrow that the prisoners couldn't even sit down. Moreover, oubliettes were built right there in the castle so that the victims could hear human voices and smell the food, causing them even more psychological suffering. Yet, the real torture was the fact that the prisoners were literally forgotten about in these holes.
Really?
And they slowly died of thirst, hunger, exhaustion, and infections.
Wow.
Compared to this, a Judas cradle execution was a swift way to relieve one's suffering. The oubliette is a kind of immurement, which has been practiced.
So, if you heard that, the only way for them to get out of that is to go to the Judas cradle?
Since ancient times on all continents. In the Roman Empire, the most influential Vestals who had broken their virginity pledge were sentenced to death. It was against the law to shed their blood, though. So they were immured alive, fated for a slow, desperate death. If you think this insane practice remained in days past, you're wrong. In Mongolia, this barbaric execution method was still in use until at least 1913. So immurement, in its different variations, receives 108 points on the pain scale. But what if you're not alone in this closed space? Then it's an entirely different kind of punishment. Rat torture. As far back as in the 1st century AD, the cruelest emperor in the history of the Roman Empire, Nero, used rats to torture those who fell out of favor. They say he put the victim into a barrel with hungry rats who quickly ate the person alive.
Allergies,
in India, they made criminals wear wide pants, which were first tied around the ankles and then filled with rodents. Any ideas as to which body parts suffered the most and how painful it was? However, medieval torturers took it even further. They tied the victims down to immobilize them, then placed a bottomless cage on their abdomens and filled it with rats. Then they put hot wood coal on the grates, and the rats became unbearably hot. First, they tried gnawing at the cage in desperate attempts to escape. Later, though, the rats realized they were standing on a soft human body and started eating their way out through it. Sometimes the cage was put on the victim's head, near the mouth, or other body parts. I'll let your imagination fill in the detail.
Bro, that's just cruel. Now, if you do some weirdo crime, I don't have no sympathy for you. But, bro, like, imagine, like, you stealing, like, a motherfucking couple of apples, bro, and they do this to you, bro. This is crazy. That's crazy.
The most horrible thing is probably the fact that in South American countries, rat torture was in use until the 1980s. It received 112 points on the pain scale.
Damn.
It would seem that there's nothing worse than this. But before we get to the most horrifying tortures that scored the maximum of 140 points, there are still 2 more devices, the first of which is the rack. This is another deadly invention of the Middle Ages. It looked like a wooden frame with rollers on both ends. The person's limbs were tied to them, and when the torturers would start turning the rollers, the victim's arms and legs would stretch in different directions. This caused unbearable pain due to joint displacement, muscle and ligament ruptures, and, in the most horrific cases, even bone fractures. The executioners could torture the victim like this for hours or even days to beat the confession or the necessary information out of them. Sometimes, a specifically trained person would supervise the victim's condition to keep them conscious and alive before a specific time. So, it's unsurprising that just threatening someone to send them to the rack would often be enough to obtain the necessary...
Now, also, think about it, too. It's crazy, like, some of these movies and stuff, too, where they have, like, these crazy, like action parts or climaxes of the movie or whatever, like, all that comes from just back in the days of this, like, weird torture and shit like that.
Information. This horrible type of torture received 116 points on the pain scale. However, citizens of ancient Greece managed to outperform even the cruelty of medieval European torturers, being the creators of one of history's most terrifying torture devices, the brazen bull. According to stories, it was built by an Athenian named Perilos as a commission for a Sicilian tyrant, Phalaris, in the 16th century BC. It was a hollow copper statue of a bull with a hatch on its side. A person would be pushed inside, the hatch would be shut, and then the torturers would start a fire under the bull's belly. Furthermore, the statue's nostril structure made the victim's scream sound like the bull's bellow. Yet this barbarism was apparently not enough. So after the execution, the victim's bones were used to make jewelry to then be sold on markets. The inventor of this hellish machine realized very quickly that doing business with tyrants was a bad idea, since the first person Phalaris tried out the brazen bull on was Perilos himself. First, the man's skin started burning in the places where it touched the metal. Then, the hot air gradually burned his airways and lungs. He went on to slowly cook alive before choking to death or going unconscious.
That's crazy.
Before this, though, Perilos went through the agony that reached 130 points on the pain scale. Even this horror, though, won't compare to the fate of those sentenced to Lingchi. It's definitely one of the most barbaric punishments in humanity's entire history.
Really?
And it hails from Asia. It was used in China, Vietnam, and Korea right until the early 20th century.
Damn.
To punish perpetrators of the most heinous crimes like mass murder and high treason, as well as to eradicate the emperor's personal enemies. It comes as no surprise, since the victim would be tied to a pole in a crowded space to turn the execution into public humiliation. Then, a few torturers would slowly cut pieces of flesh out of the convict's arms, legs, and chest. We know from historical records that during Lingchi, the victim would suffer from 100 to 3,000 wounds. That's why this torture is also dubbed death by 1,000 cuts.
Wow.
Although the experts state that with such wounds, a person would most likely die within 20 minutes. Sometimes the families of the victims would bribe the executioners to inflict a deadly wound right away. This wouldn't remove the victim's physical pain, but it's worth remembering that for the Chinese, Lingchi was also a spiritual punishment. According to their beliefs, this disfigurement of the body wouldn't allow the victim to be whole and healthy in the afterlife. This horrific execution method officially remained in use in China until 1905. This type of torture received the most points on the pain scale, 140. I've told you all this exclusively for educational purposes and to tickle your nerves. But I hope it didn't reach torture level. If you enjoy experiencing extreme sensations without putting yourself in danger, you'll find many exciting videos.
Let me know what out of all of these painful punishments was the worst. For me, I'm trying to like pick. And nice for him labeling the videos. I always like the random like thought. I love when like YouTubers like be like labeling like their videos and stuff like that. It's like, you know what I'm saying, organized. Bro, like I say, nah, bro. It has to be, what's the one where they made you see, the Judas cradle. That has to be the worst one, in my opinion. Because, bro, you gotta think about it, bro. The sanitary reason of it. Let's say like even if you like, because they made them do it to when they confessed or whatever or some stuff like that. Let's say they was only on it for like 5 or 10 minutes and they confessed whatever they wanted them to do. Bro, they don't even clean that thing. So now you gotta worry about the diseases that you don't even know how to get diagnosed from because they don't even have the doctors to diagnose it back then, bro. Like, I feel like that punishment right there is the reason why so many diseases and sicknesses or flus exist today. Like, literally more than half of the reason why. That one right there was just flat out disgusting to me. But let me know y'all thoughts down below. Interesting to see.